Well, I think for a while now, the crypto assets market has been seen as sort of the wild west of traditional financial services products. And I think that's been reflected in the volatility of certain of the tokens that we've seen. And I think banks for a while have been hesitant to enter into that part of the market because of that perception. They don't want to be caught up in that volatility. But I think increasingly they are recognizing the potential of crypto assets more broadly. And I think the focus on certain of those more volatile tokens belies that potential. It belies the capabilities of distributed ledger technology, and it belies the capability of some of the services that banks are now able to provide. And I think banks and other financial institutions, they're reflecting that recognition of the potential through this incredible surge that we're seeing in liquidity and reserves in stablecoin in particular. One of the drivers is this increased legitimacy as an asset class. Stablecoin is a digital token designed to maintain stable value by being pegged to the currencies of other stable assets. So by its very nature, it's designed to replicate traditional fiat with all of the pros that digitization offers to it. So for example, such as ease and speed of transfer, reduced reliance on third-party payment rails, so we're talking about reduction in counterparty risk, and without the cons of that volatile value that we've seen in the market recently. And if institutions and regulators globally can get behind a common standard for stablecoin, it offers a massive potential for global cross-border trade. Then, of course, the other driver is increased regulatory certainty. In Europe, we've had the markets in crypto assets regulation in force since 2023, so MiCA that everyone knows of. And that recognized the risks of crypto in its own right and defined a framework for crypto business. The US, of course, has recently enacted the Genius Act in July of this year. And the UK has published its own draft regulation of stablecoin, which we expect to come into force in 2026. And I think the certainty of these frameworks is really fundamental to growth. Businesses like to know that if they're going to invest in building new operations, they're not going to be shut down or have to significantly change their business because of regulatory change that occurs. Well, for a long time, the UK and the EU were regulating crypto from the same starting point, which was to focus on the financial crime risks of crypto assets. And that was led by the 5th Money Laundering Directive in Europe. And in the UK, it was the money laundering regulations that flowed from that. And these required crypto issuers, exchanges, and custodians to register with their national competent authority. So the FCA in the UK, for example. Now, broadly speaking, they followed a principle of same risk, same regulation. This means that regulation didn't distinguish between types of crypto assets, but left businesses to determine whether the asset underlying their digital token was already, in fact, a regulated product. So if the token represented a security or a bond, the business needed to decide whether, in addition to the crypto assets regulation, they would have to defer to regulation for such products, such as under MiFID, Markets in Financial Instruments Directive. If the token represented e-money, for example, the business had to defer to e-money regulations. The result, which kind of remains still in the UK pending this new regulation, is that businesses have to work through this patchwork of regulation. So firstly, they have to determine whether they need to register for crypto asset purposes, but then they also need to determine whether they're going to be scrutinized at a higher level of regulation because the underlying assets also represent one of these regulated products. So what MiCA did was to distinguish between types of crypto assets and ascribe rules accordingly. It categorized crypto into asset reference tokens, which include stablecoins that we're talking about today, e-money tokens, and then also there was this catch-all bucket of just kind of broader other crypto assets, such as utility tokens and non-stable crypto. MiCA then also went a step further and expanded the list of regulated activities linked to crypto and required stablecoin businesses to be authorized to operate a trading platform, in a kind of exchange for crypto assets, to provide custody or administration of crypto assets on behalf of clients, to execute orders and portfolio management and investment advice on crypto assets, and also crypto asset exchange services, so crypto for fiat, crypto for crypto, and to receive and transmit orders in crypto assets. So it added this extra layer. And MiCA now provides this passporting regime for stablecoin. So firms authorized in one EU member state can provide their services cross-border into other EU member states. And there will also be UK rules strictly governing the nature of reserve accounts and backing assets that need to be held against stablecoin. Now, while we haven't quite got there yet on UK regulation, we do have a finalised draft of dedicated crypto rules, and we expect them to come into force in the next year. Now, as with MiCA, the UK rules specifically provide for issuance and provision of other services linked to stablecoin, and businesses already providing stablecoin services under the existing money laundering regulations will have to obtain new authorization from the FCA and possibly also the PRA. Now, importantly, for certain banks considering stablecoin services, the Bank of England has expressed concerns about contagion risk between a bank's traditional deposit-taking services and its digital services, such as stablecoin. Now, in a Dear CEO letter, the Bank of England has said that it expects any stablecoin services to be delivered by a distinct banking entity with a distinct brand name. So there's potentially a lot of work for banks to do before they can implement their stablecoin services. I think while the technology has the potential to enable fast and secure global trade, the reality is that without global agreement on acceptable operating standards for issuing and exchanging stablecoin, traditional impediments may still exist. So for example, we need agreement on the ledger technology that's going to be used across all these parties. The assets which can underpin stablecoin, we need to overcome concerns about national financial stability for systemic stablecoin. And there's a lot there to be meted out still. Despite that, I think there's a lot of positive momentum, and I'm excited about the future of this segment.